For me as a trim carpenter, one of the most important things is to make sure that I get a really tight connection between my moldings and the jamb in the wall. So sometimes if the sheetrock's in the way a little bit, I'll just beat it with a hammer to compress it. If it's really sticking out there, I'm just literally going to remove it. But that's also one of the reasons why I choose, when I'm using poplar and pretty good sized moldings, to use an 18 gauge tool inside here. Now, what's really important to me is the Grex tool leaves the smallest of holes from the driver, so I can use a good amount of 18 gauge brads here, and it really pulls that trim up tight and holds it, but it doesn't leave a bunch of big holes. That means a lot to me and my painter. I would just as soon mark something as cut it. Now, right now I don't have a finished floor in here, but I'm still going to just put my casing trim right down this slab and make a mark where I'm going to cut. You know, I've never mismeasured when I was just making a mark and then cutting to that mark. So maybe it takes a minute longer, but that's a lot better than having to buy another piece of molding. One of the other little things that I always try to do is block plane this under just a little bit. And what I'm really trying to do is make sure that just the face of this trim is going to make contact first, because that's the only part you're going to see. So if I kind of give it a little under relief, that just gives me a lot better chance of getting a really good joint. To really make this look right, I've got to have great contact between this piece of trim and the jamb. If you look at this, there's not a whole lot of wood back behind the edge of this. With trim, we almost always use 1/4 to 3/16 reveal. So one of the greatest challenges for me is to be able to get in there and put that fastener in place without coming out this direction, running a nail out this side, or putting too much of an angle and not hitting the wood back there. And that's one of the things I absolutely love about this tool. The way the nose piece is designed, I can get good contact with even the smallest edge on this trim. And I'm going to tell you, some of the trim patterns we use, it would almost be impossible for me to put the nail where I want it if it wasn't for the nose piece on this Grex brad nailer. Well, I'm really happy to say that we were able to get this lined up really nicely so that this trim's just going to run straight down there. Now, I'm using an 1.5" 18 gauge brad on this inside edge. Sometimes we'll use 1.25", but again, for me, when I'm using poplar, I like to use an 18 gauge tool in this application. Now, when I get ready to swing to the outside, I'm going to switch to a 2" fastener because I'm going through a lot more. And I'm a pretty big believer in putting these fairly often. I'll put them maybe every 6 to 8 inches, which is why it's important to me that the nail holes are small, which is why I really like this tool. Now, I just nailed this outside edge off using 2" 18 gauge brads. And I put quite a few in there, probably every 10 inches or so. Sometimes I'll actually use 15 gauge 2.5" nails for that. If I was doing that, I'd probably spread those out a little bit more. And if this trim was any thicker on this outside edge, I would definitely go to the 15 gauge 2.5" nails. There's lots of different ways to install casing trim around a door. I know some guys, they'll start on one side, then they go across the top, and then they come down the side. For me, I like to install both sides and really get them totally nailed on tight, and then I fit the top piece. And so I purposefully cut this piece a little bit long, and then I center it where I've got about 1/16 hanging out each side, and I look at each of these joints to see how do I need to modify that joint to get a really, really good fit. Like this one over here, I need to take just a little bit, maybe a 32nd off the inside edge. So I'm going to just put a little mark there. Now I'm going to move over and see what I need to do to this one. Okay, I'm just going to tell you I can't do anything to that one to make it better. So now, just like with the side piece, I'm going to take my block plane and under bevel both ends of this a little bit. You know, I could fidget with that a little bit more, but the chances of me getting it any better are pretty slim. So what I want to do now is put a little glue in both ends, because a joint like this that's not captured inside a frame, I like to put a little glue on. Then I'm going to nail the inside edge, and I'll probably drive an 18 gauge brad, a short one down there, is kind of a pull nail, because one of the things that's important, this joint not only needs to line up right here where there's not a crack in it, but it also needs to be flush here. In other words, if that was out like that, that's not a good joint. There's not a crack, but that will really show up when it's painted. So our goal was to get it nice and flat, and that was another reason we wanted to get some of that sheetrock out of the way, because the sheetrock can keep it from pulling up tight. Well, those are two pretty good joints. That one over there is almost perfect, and this one's pretty good. Now, the only thing I need to do now is go ahead and put some 2-inch brads through this top edge, but one of the things I've learned, I don't want to nail anything out here close to this, so I'll probably come over about 6 or 8 inches and put my first fastener and then just go across the top. I'm really proud of that joint. They don't all turn out that good, but my goal is always to make them that good. Sometimes I say, you know, if you strive for perfection, there's a lot better chance you're going to achieve excellence. So this is all cased out. The next thing we need to do is make this mullion across here. It's going to be just a thin piece with probably just a rounded over edge just to ease it a little bit.